Welcome to Buckets, your daily NBA betting podcast, live from the Tommy John Home Studios. When you're truly comfortable, you do everything better, and that includes betting, which is phenomenal news because we got some picks for you right here, right now. We've got caps, we've got picks, we're in, we're out. I'm your host today, Brandon Kravitz, and here with me, Michael Fiddle, at Fiddle's Picks in the app. Sir, we are into the messy portion of the season, but still some values out there to be had. We are still squeezing some juice from this orange, but it does feel, Fiddle, like perhaps the juice is running thin. It was tough. I think it was tougher than normal for us to settle in on some picks, but I still have a couple that I like.
Yeah, Brandon, I think this March is going to be a little bit more normal than past Marches in the sense that there's a level of competitiveness and tight seedings that are going to force teams to remain kind of similar to what they have been, and thus the lines are pretty sharp because we have large sample size data on all of these teams and enough information from the trade deadline to start to price these things damn near perfectly. So we're not seeing that much movement. We're seeing a lot of market consensus on the board. And historically in March, you get the least efficient CLV month, which means like obviously it's still good to have tickets that are closing ahead of the market. But in a normal January or December, let's say the direction from open to close may cash 56, 57% of the time and run really good. In March, that drops to, 53%. And you have to clear 52.38 if we're getting real math and nerdy early in a Buckets podcast to be profitable on minus 110. So the margins are thinner. You have to pick your spots a little bit more. You have to consider waiting on spots and resisting the market in certain directions. So I do think it's going to be more of a normal March, but take in consideration the time of the year and the way these teams operate into your handicaps.
I have found that I'm a little more selective right now in terms of filling out the card than I would be, and partially it's because of the efficiency that you talk about. I appreciate you getting mathy and nerdy on me because I don't know how much you're going to get that from me. That's what we depend on you for, Fiddle. But we also have March Madness coming up right around the corner, and I know for a lot of folks that are listening to this right now, you want to make sure that that balance is nice and full by the time the tournament comes around, because it's always fun to dig into that. Also, the NBA playoffs right around the corner. A reminder that everything that we talk about today can be found in the award-winning Action Network app, as well as quick slips for our picks today in the episode description. So we'll go back and forth. We'll give our picks. We'll get into it, and then we'll get you on out of here. Fiddle, what you looking at on the Wednesday slate?
Yeah, it was hard to find one, but I'm going to go with the Denver-Sacramento over 236. And I suggest betting this smaller than you normally would. This is a slate where I haven't found a lot of value, so sometimes I'll come in here and say, bet this twice as hard. We'll get into it, but half as hard, 3/4 as hard as your normal unit.
Two teams, both top 10 in terms of offensive rating, so it makes some sense there. I like going Shai-Gilgeous Alexander over 31.5 points. It's a square bet, but he hits this all the time, so that is something to consider here. And I'll take the Pistons minus 2.5 on the road against the currently active, as we are recording this right now, LA Clippers. The Clippers will be on the second night of a back-to-back. So go ahead and get us started with this overplay. Is it as simple as you love these offenses? The matchup, the style, what are you looking at here as far as this total goes?
Yeah, I even like, this might seem crazy to say, but matchup specific, I even like that Sabonis is going to miss this game, and he's the real key injury, but that's going to cause the Kings to play more Trey Lyle, and it's going to cause them to space their offense more and then play with more pace and play more through Malik Monk, Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, and then Denver, on the other hand, just all day, run and gun. Murray's playing great. Jokic is questionable, so when he gets ruled in, maybe this pops to 237, 237.5, 238 starts to come up on the market when these guys go from questionable to active. I expect them all to be playing besides Sabonis. I expect the Kings to attack from the perimeter, which is where Denver struggles, is stopping that first line of attack and then not having the best interior defense to make up for it. And I expect the Nuggets to just be an efficiency machine going against some depleted front court when you have Nikola Jokic out there on offense. So both sides of the ball should be moving and should be efficient, should be able to attack each other's weaknesses. So give me that over 236. I think it definitely closes slightly ahead of that in the market.
It feels like one of those matchups that classically goes over. Looking at the history, the last 5, you guys that have the Action Network app have access to this in the same way that we do. The last 2 for these teams, which is the most relevant in this data set, have gone over the total. And those totals were higher than what you're betting into right now. 242.5 is what it closed at on January of this year. And then in mid-December, it was at almost the exact same number, over under at 237. So you do have some history on your side here. Is that something that you'll look at either to bet into or to bet against when you have these matchups these are familiar opponents that have played each other multiple times this year, and you've had an overhit in the first 2 times these teams have played against one another? Does that factor in at all to you? Is it something that you want to look at to either lean in or to back away from a bet?
Not much. I mean, I enjoy hearing that the data supports the direction of my play, and I'm not going against the recent sample size, but I generally think those are priced in. Brandon, you mentioned that it's relative to where those games were priced and closed. So I think that nuance and that detail is very important to citing those statistics. If we simply look back on previous games and used the numbers currently, like, oh, they need to break 236. Have they been breaking 236 in the past? That's a different team, right? There were different injury reports. There was different rest spots. It might have been different home court advantage. So many things, different look-ahead spots for what was coming. So there's so many reasons for why past matchups might be a little bit different. I do value matchup advantages. So, like, we know Boston has a matchup advantage against the Knicks. We know the Houston Rockets have a matchup advantage versus the Memphis Grizzlies. We could keep going, right? There's plenty of them throughout the league because that's a play style thing, and you can't really get away from play style, especially in the NBA regular season where you're running the same basic sets every night for 82 games, and you're going to make more specific adjustments in the playoffs. So if you could attack certain play styles and use matchup history for that, it's more related to spreads and money lines than totals. But definitely happy to hear you say that it's been going over, because I don't want to be on the wrong side of recent sample.
Well, and even better is it's smashing the over. I mean, you're talking about games that are played deep into the 250s, 260s. So we
have to remember Fox was probably part of all of those.
100% correct. I mean, we're talking about mid-January and mid-December, so that would check out. I like SGA. I'm going over 31.5 points scored. His number usually sits around 30.5. The fact that they've only bumped it up by a point, to me, doesn't even feel like enough. So I would bet this up. I would take it up another point at 32.5. It's always going to feel nice and cozy taking an SGA over. And honestly, I probably haven't done it enough over the course of the season. I just don't see how he doesn't go off in this one. Memphis has been a matchup that he has feasted on this season, 32 and 35 in his first 2 meetings. And over the past 10 games, the Grizzlies defense has been brutal. Second worst defense in the NBA. SGA coming off of a 51-point game on national TV for this one, with a real chance to slam the door shut on this MVP campaign. Also the highest total in the league for the Wednesday slate. So I'm liking SGA over 31.5 points scored.
Also, no Jaren Jackson Jr. He's going to be missing week to week, was the most recent report with him. So defensive player of the year candidate, going to be out of the lineup for Memphis. You want to attack someone who can get to the rim, shoot in the mid-range, and play in the gaps is something that SGA really does well. No Jaren to cover up the defensive woes of the other Grizzlies players. So there's a reason why the total's 250. You say you could bet it up another point and play it to like 32.5. Like, realistically, you could play it up to about 48.5 with SGA.
I wouldn't recommend it. But I didn't know that. I was going to go, usually with props, I go half units, and with sides and totals, I go full units. Just my own personal preference with betting. But this feels like a full unit play, especially when you consider if you're playing into props. I love the angles of guys that are striving for certain awards, and it feels like from now until the end of the season, if there's any deferral, not that you need any extra motivation to get SGA the ball, but for him to go off now feels most beneficial because it's going to be a race to the finish line with him and Nikola Jokic. I also like the Pistons -2.5 on the road against the LA Clippers. Clippers will be on the second night of a back-to-back. It's a big-time trend play. On the season, the Clippers, one of the worst covers with no rest, 33%. It makes sense. They have the kind of guys that just don't play second nights of back-to-backs, Kawhi Leonard. And the Pistons have been road warriors all year long. Second best road cover rate in the league. They've won 10 of their last 11 games. And then matchup-wise, I just like the way that these two teams stack up against one another. I like that you have a big physical guard like Cade Cunningham on James Harden. So you're kind of taking out the head of the snake, at least to some degree. I think he can disrupt the Clippers' flow on offense. All signs point to Detroit being able to go on the road and get a win in this one.
Cade is another guy who might be playing for an award, right? Most improved. I think he's well in the lead of that race. So he will also be playing and betting into that, and SGA as well. I like it. You have the Clippers playing right now. They've been on a recent skid, but as we're recording this, they're up 16 at halftime. Kawhi Leonard is playing tonight. So as Brandon said, you don't play back-to-backs. He's not going to be playing tomorrow. Kawhi will be on the bench. Norm Powell remains out, so it is going to be the Harden-Zubac pick-and-roll spamming over and over and over again. I will say, Bogdanovich addition at the deadline gives them a little bit of offensive boost for the times that they're missing some of the other guys like Norm. Chris Dunn has really been playing some sensational basketball, so there's a lot of reason to take the Clippers, even from the Pistons, even from a market perspective. So I do ultimately agree with you, but I think
So what's the
Clippers
hesitation?
Because
this feels like this. I mean, the Pistons have been one of the better teams to back this year in the NBA in the right spots. This feels like such a Pistons spot here. What's the hesitation? Why can't I get Fiddle over the finish line on this one?
I love backing the Pistons as road underdogs. Road favorite.
It's the favorite play.
Yeah, you're and the Clippers are a damn good team. Like they're very well coached. They do have a home court advantage with the wall at Intuit Dome. And so like ultimately, and like the LA Knights that potentially are a factor still for a young Pistons team. Tobias Harris is going to be out for the Pistons, so they'll be missing one of their veterans. Listen, Pistons are playing like so over their head basketball. It is amazing to watch. They've been fantastic. Bickerstaff should be a lead candidate for Coach of the Year right behind Atkinson. So credit to what they've done, and who am I to pour water on it? If anything, I would bet Pistons. I just haven't bet it yet. And I will say, I think the Clippers are more apt to handle the lessened situation since the deadline acquisitions. So I want to give them a little bit of chance to pull themselves out of the mud here.
Also, if I'm being fair, if I'm going to give the trends, I hate when people do this, and I'll do it all the time. But if you give the trends and it only backs your side and you just leave out the other stuff, it's probably not fair to a listening audience. I tell you that, and none of these numbers are fudged. The Clippers have not been a good cover team on the second night of a back-to-back. The Pistons have been an incredible cover team on the road. But there is an important piece of information here if you want to fade this pick, is that the Clippers are the best cover team in the NBA at home. That Intuit Dome factor that you talk about, how about 69% of the time they're covering the spread at home? So it is important to know that information before you go hog wild on the Detroit Pistons.
Another cool one for Intuit Dome is I don't know if it still holds, but the last time I checked it, that opponent free throw percentage was not only lowest in the NBA this season, but lowest that it's been in any stadium in like 20 years. So like that wall and that depth perception thing is actually statistically real for opponent free throws.
How long do you think it took to figure that out? That I know you're somebody that's digging into the numbers constantly. We weren't really sure. You kind of had a feeling this was going to have some impact, either negatively or positively, on totals, on the Clippers, on opponents. And there was this feeling out process early in the season. How long do you think it took to figure out that this new dome and the setup that they have actually has some form of an impact?
This might be crazy to say, but as bettors, we got the gift of Kevin Durant playing there in one of the first nights of the Intuit Dome. I believe the very first game at the Intuit Dome.
I know what you're talking about.
I believe he went 0-2 and even maybe airballed one of them and then spoke about it after the game as one of his main points. So I think we were kind of told pretty quickly from one of the all-time greatest bucket getters in league history that this thing is real. And then we kind of tracked it from there. And we were like, yeah, this is real. And then Paul George goes there when he's with the 76ers now. And he goes 2 for 2. And he's saying after the game, he's like, at least I went 2 for 2. And all the other star players are actually outwardly recognizing it. So I think they kind of told us it was real, and then the numbers showed it to be true itself.
So before we put a final wrap on our episode, I just wanted to see if you could help me officially usher in an RIP for a Dallas Mavericks Western Conference Final winner ticket that I placed after the AD Luka trade. I thought, let me get ahead of this because I think this new combination of Kyrie and Anthony Davis, while everybody's slamming Nico Harrison for trading Luka Doncic, which I didn't agree with, but I did like the way that the Mavericks were structured as a basketball team. 16-1. This might be the worst ticket that I have ownership of right here, and just wanted to send my condolences to myself and see if I could get a nice word before I officially light it on fire.
Light that on fire. Actually, don't light it on fire. Send it to Nico Harrison as an invoice because he owes you some money now. But I will say, Brandon, just quickly, this is the time of year where you're going to start to be able to grade your futures tickets kind of before they're officially graded. So that will remain as a pending wager on whatever sportsbook you put it in until the final day of the season when the Mavs are, I don't even know if they're going to make the play-in. Let's just say for easy sake that they don't even make the play-in. And so you know right away at the start of May or late April that ticket's actually gone. And then it will officially, cash or not the opposite of cash, like go away, no longer be pending. So what I would do from a bankroll management standpoint is go through your futures tickets, understand which ones are losers, throw out the losers, reduce what your available or what your account balance is going to be, and so you have a fairer representation of your unit size. You don't want to be overexposed or underexposed given your day-to-day betting based on your futures portfolio. So know which tickets are dead, know which tickets technically aren't actually in your bankroll, they're just sitting there as a lie, and get rid of those so that you know what your true unit is, right now if you're a 1% or 2% unit better from your bankroll.
Well, I don't know that I can account for many winners in the futures market. You gotta be quite confident in some that you've placed out there, or maybe for some of you, if you've placed over unders on season win totals and things like that.
That's the best one. The other ones I have problems with.
I know you're not much of a futures bettor, and I think I might venture over to your side. It just seems like it always.
Can I convince you in one sentence?
Oh, I mean, just when it ends, it just ends so horrifically like this. And I got to stare at this ticket for the next couple of months that has no chance to hit. This would be a bad number if they made it to round 2 of the playoffs. Yes, it's still bad.
That speaks to my point. People with great long shot tickets end up hedging them, right? So then they're tying up money and then hedging them later. So it's just like 2 less than ideal optimal bankroll strategies in doing that, right? Tying something up and then later hedging it. Or you're just taking shots and they end up missing. Or you could look back and just say, I could have taken that same angle and done it in essentially a mechanical parlay and like rolled over. Like if you like the Kings right now and you think the Kings are going to make the playoffs or get in easily into the play-in, and that's the kind of side that you want to ride, should have been betting them money line, rolling it over last week when they had Jazz and Pelicans that when they were completely washed, and then they had 3 days rest before the Rockets, and that's a prime spot. If you're just rolling over Kings money lines, you probably returned what you were going to return on the future in a week, and then could still do with that. So look schedule spots, look more mechanically, look more game to game, pick spots you want to avoid, and churn that bankroll pretty quickly. So it's a great advice.
It's not that all futures bets are a bad idea. I think the futures market is much better from a content perspective than it is a betting perspective.
There's a reason why you don't find these markets at the sharpest books. That's where I'll end it. You do find win totals, which is the one where I chimed in and said, that's the best one. You don't find clutch player of the year. at the sharpest books.
I never want to lay a bet on something that is in the hands of a media member's vote. That's not where I like my money tied up. If you want to instantly tail the bets that we've discussed in this episode, you can find the quick slip link in the podcast YouTube video description or over on actionnetwork.com/bet. Now, when you're truly comfortable, you do everything better, and that includes betting. So go get yourself into some Tommy Johns. To recap, Fiddle likes the Nuggets and the Kings over 236.5. I'll take the Pistons on the road as 2.5-point favorites against the LA Clippers, and SGA over 31.5 points scored. Bet up to 32.5 if you do see that number rise. Shout out to David Payne, our producer. That is a wrap for the Wednesday episode. Thanks so much for tuning in. Let's get buckets.